Welcome to the first edition of the Being Trauma Informed video podcast. My name is Chris Wilson, and for our maiden voyage, I'm joined today by my good friend, Judge Shaun Floerke from Duluth, Minnesota, who has been a champion of both Being Trauma Informed, the organization, and Being Trauma Informed as a practice. Good morning, Shaun. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? This is maiden voyage. That's scary, man. Pressure's on.
No pressure. It's just go south. It's all on you, man.
Right. Viewers 1, negative comments 1.
So why don't you tell folks a little bit about who you are, where you came from as a judge, or what did you do before you were a judge, and we'll dive right in.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. I forgot. I'm looking at my watch because it's 16 years and 3 days since my first time, quote, on the bench, end quote. So yeah, I've been doing it 16 years. I was a prosecutor. I was always a litigator. So I've always been kind of a fighter and an arguer. Came into this work 16 years ago, oddly enough. And we do everything. So we do criminal, civil, family, juvenile, the whole shebang. But a lot of what I've done and am known for is treatment courts. So courts designed around digging into what kind of drives the bus for people in terms of behavior around criminal behavior, but addiction, mental health struggles, etc. And it's been a good time to be alive in America because we're learning. We haven't learned, but we're learning how to do better interventions for our folks. And I was drawn to those because when I started, it was clear that what we were doing was not working. It was one size fits all, repeat, repeat, repeat. And if it didn't work, it was your fault. So we incarcerated you or yelled at you or shamed you. And it didn't. And then you'd hear, you'd hear judges in meetings say, I don't think any of what we do is working. I'm like, then why are you doing the same thing again and again?
Right.
So, yeah. So it's been a journey of discovery and learning and trying and reading and research and application and challenge and more learning.
Well, so as we dive in here, we're going to talk about where Being Trauma Informed fits into your courtroom. But how do you define what it means to be trauma informed? When you hear that phrase, what does that mean to you?
You know, that's a really, really good question, because it first for me, and most everybody I know kind of our age, and nobody gets out of this thing without serious challenge. And you can wander around when you're in your 20s thinking you've got it so bad and everybody else doesn't, and then all of a sudden you start to figure out everybody's had hard times and everybody's having or will have. And so fundamentally, being trauma informed broadly to me means understanding that everybody's got a struggle, everybody's got a story, everybody's trying to overcome kind of that shared level humanity. But then what I started to understand and learn in the courtroom as a judge, which is, our structures are big power structures, right? You wear this robe, you're up high, they're huge power structures. And intuitively, you could see it wasn't working for folks. They were reacting in a lot of different ways that kind of didn't make sense at first. So come to find out, trauma informed for me is being open and aware to the proposition that people may not be, they may have on board a lot of things that I can't see. Their behavior is impacted or driven or overwhelmed by those traumas and histories. And then we have an obligation to try to build spaces where people can manage that and be at their best despite or even because of their histories, you know.
And,
So it was all about rebuilding and what we're doing both kind of interpersonally and systemically.
and is it fair to say that 16 years ago, when you started out as a judge, you wouldn't say you were trauma informed at that time, or would you? Like, how have you found?
Zero. That's not an okay. It's a zero. That, you know, that's the magic secret about being a judge, is they don't teach you. You don't. There's kind of not a lot of introduction, and you don't have a lot on board. I was aware of people and struggle and violence and trauma writ large, yeah, for sure. But in terms of kind of those impacts on behavior and addiction cycles and habit loops and not, you know, nah, I would, nah, I had
Did you
nothing.
find your way into this notion of allowing trauma to affect the way that you work as a judge?
Good teachers, good teachers. One of the, yeah, judges are hard to teach, and the longer you've been a judge, the harder you are to teach, because of the power stuff, right? And you're used to making decisions and being comfortable. Um, I was blessed early on, and still am, with really good teachers coming out of chemical dependency treatment. Bill Plum back in the day, Julie Seitz, a dear friend of mine, um, psychologists I work with, um, folks who could teach me and help me back up and draw some understanding. And then seeing, oh, this works. This makes sense. This is good for people. This is good for everybody. This, you know, so just drawn into it working, it making sense, and being good outcomes are a pretty good sales tool too.
Yeah, success is reinforcing, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you know, it's like, wow.
So what
You
kind
know,
of
as opposed to the model 20 years ago,
right.
why isn't this working? Nothing we do works. I hate it. Yeah, we're actually, yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of things do you do concretely to create a trauma informed courtroom, a trauma informed process?
The, there's so many answers, right? There, I think, I think fundamentally, I try to listen and establish um, reciprocity with somebody, um, and give space to do back and forth. I tell my folks all the time, um, you don't need to trust me until I've proven myself trustworthy, which kind of turns judicial models on their head. You know, people are like, what? You're supposed to be honest with me, son. Maybe I should show that I'm going to be honest with you first. You know, what's this? So I think it's creating an atmosphere of openness, listening, respect, dignity, um, letting people really speak, and even such skills as the active listening, you know, and being able to, what I hear you saying, just kind of that interaction. It sounds simple. It sounds really simple. Um, it turns the courtroom on its head a little bit sometimes.
Well, knowing that phrase, simple but not easy, is it easy?
Yeah. No, right? And you know, you're challenging the whole dang system. I went somewhere, you, when somebody comes into my court, it can often become the attorneys and the legal folks talking about someone, and we use people's last names and we can dehumanize them in that conversation. And what I started doing, what I still do, is first people I talk to are the people, the litigants. I never talk to the attorneys first. And I've been places where people really react strongly against that, because that's not how it's done.
Meaning in
Just,
other courtrooms.
yeah, you know, you fill in other jurisdictions or something. They're like, well, that's weird. You just said hi to the defendant and asked him how he was doing. Yeah, it's his life, man. You know, so I think creating a culture where that's the norm is really hard, because we can get all about the business, the volume, go, 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 go. And then back to the power structures. If I never acknowledge you, it's just kind of running over people and running through people. And it takes more time sometimes, right? I have a buddy who, when he gets behind, and he can feel his staff kind of tensing up, we've got a bunch. He's like, we're going to do one. Then we'll do the next person.
Yeah.
Then, that presence of, I'm with you, I'm here.
Yeah, back when I was training law enforcement on a fairly regular basis on interviewing, I had a young detective say, yeah, if it got to a certain point in the interview, I had to resist the urge to just dive in and say, there's stuff I need to know.
Yeah, just press it. And and you know how you tighten up, you feel your body tighten up and you've got an agenda. And I asked a young man this morning, just 10 minutes ago, it's a commitment hearing, but he's in custody. It's very, very serious, but he's a farmer. And I said at the end, and I knew what it would do. I just knew that it would take time. But I said, Andrew, what kind of farming do you do? And he talked for 6 or 7 minutes about the farming he does. And everybody's frustrated with me because that's 6 or 7 minutes we didn't have to spend. And I had Bree email you and say, sorry, Chris, we're going to be a little late. I'm like, I think it mattered to him for me to say, what kind of farming do you do? I'm going to make a big, big, big decision about whether he's free as a human being for the next several months. And I felt like that was the right, curious question to ask. But it can make people, there were a few people frustrated with me because we were done. We're out, let's go. But it felt human.
I was just going to say, you, in my mind, you just came up with another definition of what it means to be trauma informed, and that is to humanize.
Right. Give people space, listen, honor. Yeah, and he knows I don't have to agree with him. I'm not gonna agree with him. But at least I gave him space, and I, I'll use first names when you shouldn't, because I want to have people know that I'm hearing them and I'm interacting with their lives. This is very, very, very precious stuff.
Yeah. So do you see the impact day to day when you're on the bench?
Sometimes not. That's the devilish piece, is that the impacts are not readily observable. Sometimes they are. People will thank you or whatever. You can just see them. You'll see somebody calm down. I'll regularly coach people. Hey, take a breath with me. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, really. I'm going to breathe. You're going to breathe with me. You can see, oh, that helped. Thanks. So there are times, but that the human endeavor is such a, it's such a long scope and such a downstream and such, slow impacts and slow changes. The nice thing in my treatment courts is I have people for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years. So I get to see those lives. Yeah. I mean, I get to, and so I try to take time to suck that in and celebrate that, try and overcome the negative override, the negative bias. But it's a mixed bag. But often you just see people kind of disarm and realize, oh, I can talk to this dude.
And you don't limit this to treatment court.
No. It's everywhere I go. That's the cool thing for people who are practitioners in treatment courts. I had a friend years ago call them these beautiful little courts, which is so right. but then they can impact the whole system. Everything I've learned from treatment court, I take everywhere I go, right? This was a commitment hearing this morning, a petition for a mental illness commitment. I had a family case yesterday where I'm talking to mom and dad and, back and forth, and it just, it's the way I want to live. It really is.
It's interesting. I used to do work with abusive men,
Yeah.
and part of the resistance to treating with them compassionately, to seeing them as human, was
Right.
that if you did that, then you couldn't hold them accountable. And there was good
Right.
reason for that. Back in the 70s and early 80s, even, I think folks were not holding abusive individuals accountable and being too sort of concerned about their feelings. But
Yeah.
I noticed that I could both be compassionate and hold you accountable. And I'm curious, in the judiciary, do you feel like that's some of the tension, that if I am trauma informed as a judge, that's going to influence my judgments and make it hard for me to be impartial and evaluate
Yeah.
the law?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge pressure. Um, the you don't want to be, and look at our current politicization and all that. You don't want to be soft on crime, right? Um, so everybody thinks I'm going to be hard on crime, and I'm going to, yell at you and be hard. I'm always trying to encourage everybody to think about being smart on crime. And this is being trauma informed is a methodology. It doesn't dictate the outcome. It doesn't mean that if the decision is prison or no prison, or stay in a mental health facility or get out, it doesn't dictate the decision. It's about how you process and how you treat folk. I was coming out of a coffee shop before the world locked down, and I saw one of my guys I've known for years and years and years. I've known Jason a long, long time, and had him do brilliantly with me and do badly with me. And it was the first time I'd seen him since I sent him to prison. And we started talking, and I'm asking about his sister and his mom, and what he's doing for work, and he's telling me what he's doing and how he's looking and all that. And we're about to finish, and I gotta get going. He's getting going, and he's like, is it okay if I give you a hug? I'm like, well, of course. I mean, I sent Jason to prison, and yet we can talk. I know
It can be both.
it can be both. It can be both. And then our culture always thinks accountability means put people in cages. Um, I'm much more interested in accountability of a process of change than accountability of sitting somewhere for 4 or 5 years and coming out who knows what. Predators, but I'm holding people accountable on a change process that's deeply challenging, really challenging, and I'm trying to give them the tools to make it happen.
So have you noticed that transitioning to working this way has affected you all personally? Or has your personal more affected work?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I have to take a vacation now because my work is my house. I mean, this is my, you know. I think it's been both, Chris. I think I've grown as a person as the work has gone deeper, and I think the work has gone deeper as I grow as a person too. I don't know how to separate them out. And everywhere you go, I had coffee with a friend this morning, and I had her sister in some of my court, and she died of an overdose. I went to the funeral. I knew a lot of people at that funeral. Our interactions are so overlapping, court and world, and so yeah, it's not easy to say. It's been at both ends, I think.
Now, is there a little bit of a rural versus urban piece there?
In terms of connection?
Yeah, in terms of connection and overlap.
I think the smaller the jurisdiction, the more overlap there is. Yeah. Duluth is big enough that you could hide and not have a lot of overlap. I don't, you've gone out for dinner with me here. You know how that goes.
I will tell you,
But
Shaun knows just about everybody in Duluth.
yeah,
We went to a dinner at a barbecue restaurant, and he's talking to the owner because
yeah,
the kids had worked there for years.
yeah. It, I think it's more about personal approach, but the small jurisdiction judges, there's one grocery store, there's one, so yeah, that can be an impact. And you see people go either way. There's a tendency to isolate or a tendency to kind of be out and about. Um,
Well, so to transition, you and I personally have talked a lot about resilience. I think
yeah,
uh, you just came off some time in the wilderness, talking
yeah,
about building resilience. I just thought it would be interesting for folks to hear a little bit about the kinds of things that you and your staff do professionally to build resilience within your system.
yeah. Those are that. I love that question because then it re-challenged me. And the weird thing now is my staff is remote. That's been a real challenge. So we're doing Zoom hearings all the time, which is tiring. One of the things that has developed as we've gone, and I'll circle back to broader resilience, but um, we'll do staffing, then we'll do court, and then we'll do this little weird or kind of impromptu hang around time where we just all kind of hang on Zoom after clients are done, debrief, ask how folks are doing, what do you need, what can we do better, that's been really valuable. So once a week, our group can check in and just kind of, how you doing, kick it around, laugh a little bit,
Kind of a
um,
virtual water cooler.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, whereas otherwise you're just in your kid's bedroom. um, we've done a lot of work on I've tried to bring in national level trainers as often as I can, and quality trainers, and some, like we've done a lot of trauma informed yoga work. So I've brought in, and we've done yoga together with our trauma informed instructors. And so I'm always trying to bring training opportunities to folks. And then that's also a cool hang around time and eating together and laughing together and all of that. I think those are trying to stay in tune, keep in touch with folks. And then, oh yeah, today's August 4. We've had deaths over the years. We had a young lady die 8/3 of 2019, overdose. We've had suicides. We had a gentleman die of COVID a month or so ago. So we always debrief the deaths and always talk and share. And then again and again and again and again and again and again, we try to celebrate the successes. And I'll do a lot. I will be really mindful when we have a success, especially an unexpected success. We had a young lady graduate a month or so ago who is raising a baby, who when she started, she was functioning at about an 11 or 12-year-old level. She was off the hook. And she's doing brilliantly. And so I just say to my team, okay, stop. Take a look at this. Remember what we were thinking, and let's really, really be present with that success so that you, again, the negative bias override. So we do a lot of that, a lot of small victories, big victories, trying to focus.
Yeah. Well, I think in the future, and for those of you who are listening, so mom,
Right.
Shaun and I are going to be having conversations once a month. He's going to be a regular guest on the podcast. And it strikes me that in the future, we should talk about mindfulness, because
Yeah.
I know it plays a huge role in your life personally. It plays a huge role in my life personally. And it would
Yeah.
be interesting to talk about where you see it popping up professionally. Sometimes I think even without making the direct connection.
Yeah.
But for now, I just want to say thank you, Shaun. It's been
Yeah.
an absolute pleasure having an opportunity to chat with you about these things. I hope folks have found it useful and entertaining and helpful. Uh,
Yeah.
I can tell you the litigants in your courtroom are very lucky.
I hope so. It's a privilege. It really, I find it, that's what's been really tough for me. And I have no room to complain, but the disconnect of the not being in person with people has really, it's super challenging, because that's the beauty of it, is the people and the connection and the progress and all that.
And that's a whole nother podcast, the impact of
Yeah.
it on the courts.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard to even calculate.
All right, well, we'll save that for next time.
Cool.
Thank you, Shaun.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll get my mom to watch too.
Excellent. So, we'll look forward to next time. Take care of yourself, stay healthy, stay safe, and wear a mask. I'm Chris Wilson. This has been the Being Trauma Informed Video Podcast.